Hokage, clocking in unlocks forbidden jutsu rewards. Like, share and subscribe. Episode 116. The daimyo of Kumano-kuni has no shelf, at least not in front of Tsunade. Small country after all. Seeing that everyone looked dazed, the daimyo sat down cross-legged. Bear-like size. Even if he is sitting, he still has the same height as Hinata. You may not know much about the land of ghosts. The country of ghosts is probably the most conservative and closed among the countries. No ninjas, no samurai, no daimyo. Shizen was curious, then they don't have a ruler? The daimyo looked strange and said, yes, and it's a woman, but their ruler is not a daimyo, but a witch. Speaking of which, Tsunade was a little impressed. The Senju family has a long tradition, and there are many books in the previous library. She frowned and said, is it the witch related to the ghost army? The daimyo nodded, that's right. Don't look at them without ninjas. In fact, if any country in the world is out of control, it will cause the most damage, and it will be the country of ghosts. We know best that the country of bears and the country of ghosts are neighbors. Hundreds of years ago, because they destroyed the country once, the daimyo spoke. It turns out that in the land of ghosts, a monster called the eel is suppressed. The origin of the eel is unknown, but it is said to be a monster from other worlds. Once the eel wakes up, the ghost army will wake up with it. The ghost army is endless, immortal, and once awakened, it can destroy the entire world. And the one responsible for suppressing them is the ruler of the country of ghosts, the witch. Only their bloodline, as well as the sealing technique, can seal the eel. Fang Yu listened to the meeting. Isn't this the plot of Naruto's death? A witch who can predict life and death, a witch who can seal, and a dragon-shaped eel, a monster. No wonder the name Ghost Country is a little familiar. This? Are there really witches or something? Silence feels incredible. Even Tsunade, who had seen the record, shook his head slightly, feeling that this kind of thing was most likely a legend from the Warring States period, or even earlier. Frightened you scoffed on the side, what is incredible about witches? Naruto world, ninjutsu used now. It's an imported product. Ninjutsu, chakra, itself was born from the fruit of the divine tree, planted by the Otsuki family, an extraterritorial family outside the world. In layman's terms, the ninjutsu they use is itself given by aliens. This world's native power system is an immortal art. It's a pity that the difficulty of learning fairy arts is too high. Therefore, it has gradually been replaced by ninjutsu that is more understandable and less demanding. Since ninjutsu is alien, it is not incomprehensible that this world has other powers. Seeing that Tsunade didn't believe it, the daimyo sighed, I used to hear those things as stories. But in the past month, a lot of strange things have happened. The soldiers on our border have found ghost cries coming from the country of ghosts more than once. Later, we sent someone to investigate. Don't be afraid of jokes, we have always had people in the country of ghosts. They heard the news that the witch of the Oni country had been attacked by a mysterious man. That night, a purple-black cloud floated under the palace, and there was no grass in the past. It's the same as the legendary touch. A few days ago, I sent someone to communicate with the witch, and the witch herself admitted that the soul of the eel was rescued from under the palace. They want to find ninjas for help, and they have sent people to the nearby snow ninja village. I also don't worry about going to the border, so I was going to ask your village for help, and I happened to hear that Tsunade-sama was nearby, so. The daimyo clapped his hands. A zongen below carried the box up, revealing golden, intentional gold. Tsunade immediately clapped, I took it. The speed is so fast that people are caught off guard. The daimyo was stunned for a while, then got up with a wry smile, then trouble Tsunade-sama. Others are so cheerful, he will not believe it. But Tsunade-sama. That's the ninja at the top. After the daimyo left, a day passed. Jiraiya woke up. Tsunade, who slept with the box, slowly checked it. It is confirmed that Jiraiya is also worry-free. However, in the short term, the strength is greatly reduced. And from Jiraiya's mouth, they also confirmed the authenticity of the legend about the country of ghosts. The soul of the eel has really been rescued. As long as you find the body of the eel, it can be truly resurrected. And awaken the army of ghosts. And from his mouth, everyone also learned another important news. You mean, the person who hurt you is the Great Snake Pill? Tsunade said the name and frowned involuntarily. Zilai also took the clear water sent by Shizune and nodded, that's right. I originally wanted to come to you and tell you about Konoha. Speaking of this, he looked at the feather and was a little embarrassed. Apparently, he had the same idea as shocked Ha, and wanted to find Tsunade to return to take over the position of Hokage. But the motivation is different. Frightened you is trying to be lazy. Jiraiya distrusts the Uchiha family and wants Tsunade, who is Nagasaka, to go back and fight for the position of Hokage. It's okay, go on. Tsunade waved his hand to signal that it was okay. All kissed on the mouth, their own people. Jiraiya continued, later, I heard the news that Orochimaru went to the land of ghosts, I found out that Orochimaru recently joined a dangerous organization, so I wanted to see what the hell he was doing. Later, I found out that he was in contact with a mysterious man in the land of Oni and seemed to be doing some experiments, so I wanted to investigate further. The results were discovered. That mysterious man has a strange method that can greatly stimulate the strength of his ninjas. The big snake pill went up with that group of people, and the result? Tsunade nodded heavily. It seems that the country of ghosts must go. Whether it's for the legendary eel or for the big snake pill. However, there is no two of its strength, and it makes little sense to go. Fang Yu thought for a moment and spoke. It just so happens that Hinata is still young and not suitable for adventure. The uncle took her back to Konoha. Even if it is 2/10 of its strength, the escort is enough. Tsunade thought for a moment. Let Shizune go back together, and it can also help you dispense the antidote on the way. After speaking, she looked at Fang Yu. Are you going to go together? In the past few days, she doesn't think that Fang Yu is a diligent person. Fang Yu smiled brightly. Naturally, I have to accompany. Tsunade snorted coldly, but his heart was warm. This kid is still a bit responsible. However, at this time, Fang Yu stared closely at the system panel. It's true that he's not a hardworking person, but that's a no-brainer. There is a benefit, he runs faster than anyone. Just now, the system released a task that had never been done before. Ding. The host discovers part of the worldview. New tasks are being generated. Ding. Assessment tasks issued. Please resist the onslaught from other power systems. After completing the mission, you will get a chance to improve ninjutsu. And a random reward. This task is not a mandatory task, and similar tasks will not be reminded after failure. Episode 117, Land of Ghosts, Witch Palace. A guard took Feng Yu and his group to take their seats and waited for the witch to arrive. Shiro and Jumuro watched curiously all the way. I originally thought that the country of water was conservative enough, but I didn't expect it to be far worse than the country of ghosts. If the land of water lived 200 years ago, that country of ghosts is simply the capital of 1,000 years. Palace maids and guards are preserved, and the buildings and common objects show no signs of modernization. Sir, are witches a shadow of this country? Bai pulled his sleeve and asked in a low voice. No, you should think of her as a blood stepfamily. Fang Yu replied. The sealing technique and physique of witches cannot be learned by outsiders. Comparing with the ninja system they are used to, it is indeed more similar to the blood stepper family. The four waited in the palace hall for a few minutes. Mithriya the witch, dressed up. There was also a little girl in his hand, about the same age as Hinata. Lilac pupils, long off-white hair spread to the heels, cute as a big doll, slightly bolder than Hinata, at least dared to grab her mother's skirt and peek over here. Thank you all of Konoha for coming. Mithriya the witch was about 30 years old. The temperament is dignified and intellectual, and the appearance is absolutely dusty. It's just that the skin is pale and the left leg is faintly inconvenient, not because of a congenital disability, but when he was guarding the soul of the eel some time ago, he suffered a lot of injuries. Mithriya sighed and said, the matter of the eel has always been taken care of by my ghost country. But this time the other party came prepared, and outsiders intervened. This matter was broken. Mithriya did not dare to make his own decisions, so he had to trouble you. Tsunade seemed to have doubts, but hesitated and did not respond. Fang Yu nodded. It is the duty to take people's money and eliminate disasters with people. Who exactly is the other party? Mithriya saw that it was Feng Yu who replied, and the fox looked at Tsunade suspiciously. Tsunade looked back at this time, also waiting for an answer. Mithriya was slightly startled in his heart, and his sitting posture under his skirt changed slightly, and he turned to the direction of the frightened feather. Obviously, the witch did not understand the outside world because the country was closed. It can also be seen that the leader of this team is not a Tsunade. Mithriya said, it's not a secret, the eel has always had a supporting force in the world, and the leader's codename is Huangquan. Every generation of Huangquan aims to gather the soul of the eel and the body of the eel. Huangquan has not been a major disaster in previous generations, but this time, contemporary Huangquan will use some strange methods to greatly improve the strength of ninjas. In addition, he also colluded with a group of foreign ninjas, and his strength is even more terrifying. The soul of the eel was stolen by them. When Fang Yu heard this, he asked, the resurrection of the eel requires a soul and a body, where is the body of the eel? Mithriya hesitated for a while, then said with a wry smile, it's not a secret until now. The body of the eel was sealed by me in a secret ancestral hall in the country of Numa. Their next goal is there. Things are clear. The leader of the enemy organization is called Huangquan, and there are ninjas under him. There is also a foreign aid big snake pill. The target is the Numa no Kuni ancestral hall. Seeing that Tsunade was still in a daze, he poked her with his elbow. Tsunade glared at him and said to Mithriya with a slight hesitation, Lord Mithriya, the attack that night was not simple. I don't know what Lord Mithriya used to make a defense. Humph. Even the little witch Shuren could hear that the old woman was questioning the witch's power, and raised her little white teeth at Tsunade. Maitreya smiled gently. The entire hall shook faintly. Purple patterns appeared on the inscribed pillars, and countless purple lights flashed on the ground and roof. The entire palace has become a giant formation. Tsunade only felt that the air became heavy, and chakra was running disordered, making it difficult to exert his full strength. This is just a by-effect of the formation, and it does not attack. Tsunade was secretly frightened. With her physical skills, she may be able to break through the formation. But for a shadow-level master with the same strength, a ninjutsu-type shadow-level master, I am afraid that he will die in the palace. Moreover, this sealing technique. Tsunade had never seen a similar pattern. It seems that witches do wield powers different from the ninja system. Maitreya dispersed the formation and said, I wonder if you have any questions? Tsunade shook his head in embarrassment. Instead, Jing Yu was curious, I heard that witches seem to have the ability to predict the future? Maitreya was surprised for a moment, this. Also look at the qualification, at least Maitreya did not inherit it. It's a little girl, sometimes you can see fragments of the future. Everyone looked at the doll Ziyuan. The Aster child has a heart and wants to show off. Lilac pupils shining brightly. She seemed to see something, but was a little puzzled. I see this big brother, and the old big sister too. You mean old women, right? Tsunade's eyebrows jumped. Ziyuan continued, And a big blonde sister, dark-haired, reddish-brown-haired, a lot. Maitreya smiled and said, it seems that Lord Jing Yu has high achievements in the future and is very loved. Feather raised his chin in shock. But then, Ziyuan wondered, but why don't you wear it? Fright you froze. Maitreya looked embarrassed. Tsunade glared angrily at Fenga. The scene was embarrassing for a while. Until Ziyuan spoke again, huh? This person looks like me, and I didn't, Maitreya the witch quickly covered her daughter's mouth. Look at Feng Yu again, those gentle eyes, blazing with raging anger. She's just a kid. The future of prophecy? That's not okay either. Sansui, take the distinguished guests to rest. Maitreya Yun protected his daughter and hurried away like a baby thief. Manners? My daughter is going to be abducted, who cares about this? Feng Yu looked sad. Am I that kind of person? Oh, man. Tsunade disdained and turned away. Even Shiro and Junmuro looked at him strangely. Adults are good for everything. It's the relationship between men and women. It's hard to put into words. After setting up the room, frightened feathers, sad and aggrieved, wandered around. From time to time, gazes swept over all corners of the palace. Bumped into Tsunade head-on. Ever since Tsunade had seen the prophecy, he had a look of disdain when they met. Bah, scumbag. Feng Yu coughed dryly and changed the topic. Ahem, the formation is passive. Tsunade straightened a little. I found out too. The power of the formation is still there, but there are loopholes that can be sneaked into. It seems that Huang Quan, as well as the big snake pill, want to kill them all. Feng Yu nodded, which was also what he noticed. At this moment, there was a violent explosion behind him. Feng Yu looked back and saw that it was the guest room he had settled into. Episode 118, Frightened and Tsunade looked at each other and tacitly parted ways. Tsunade leaned backwards and went straight to Maitreya's dormitory. The witch claims to be the only person who can seal the eel, and naturally the first target to kill. Tsunade keeps the witch safe. Feng Yu went to see the two cubs. When they arrived at the guest room, the large room of more than 100 square meters was blown apart. There was a large amount of ice residue left on the ground, as well as black marks from the explosion. A crisp sound came from the courtyard. Four silhouettes are intertwined and fighting. Seeing that the two cubs were okay, Feng Yu nodded and watched the battle from the sidelines. From the ice crystals, Bai was the first to spot Lord Jing Yu's figure. I couldn't help but feel nervous. He practiced hard in Suanon village for half a year, just to meet adults. Now that I have finally arrived in Konoha, I have never had a chance to show it. Just now, he smelled a different smell in his dream. Shiro thought of the class he had taken at Konoha Ninja School and immediately knew that it was gunpowder. The inspiration for the explosion charm. It was too late to escape, and he used a large amount of ice crystals to wrap himself in Junmuro, and only then escaped. But a large amount of ice crystals consumed him a lot of chakra. At this time, it seems that it is impossible to deal with its enemies. Can't let adults down. Even as a tool, it must be a valuable tool. Shiro looked at his opponent. A total of 2 people attacked them, and they carried out sneak attacks at night, but they wore bright white clothes. A thin girl like a girl. A man like a mountain. Junmuro knew that he didn't have enough tacit understanding with Shiro, but the enemy was definitely a group of veterans. So he got close at the first time and forced the strong man away. The little sister is actually a blood ninja. The girl crossed her waist and carried a leather whip in her hand, but it's not a good thing that being done met me. Fire escape, G floating dead lotus. A large number of flames burst out, melting the ice between the two into water. The girl looked at the large number of water stains on the ground and grinned. Now it's my home field. The maiden lifts her feet softly, like a ballet dancer. And then a sharp kick. Water escape, cut on water. The water stain condenses into a line, quickly cut to white. The girl dances in general, and the movements on her feet are non-stop. Phew. Phew. White quickly seals, rising the ice wall. But there is no resistance in front of the water jet. Tofu-like, buy everything into two. Can't be passively defensive. Shiro instantly understood. The opponent has many attack methods, and strong defense can only fail. The white general will dodge the water knife, roll under, and quickly seal the seal with one hand. Put one hand in front of your mouth. Being done, yen shue shue. A strong wind carried snowflakes towards the girl. The snowflakes flew bigger and bigger, and soon turned into snowflake darts, falling all over the sky. The girl snorted coldly, and the water array wall blocked in front of her, stopping it. Bai takes advantage of the gap and does not retreat but advances. The water stains on the ground gradually condensed into ice, and ice mirrors rose from the ground, wrapping the girl in it in all directions. Ice escape, magic mirror, ice crystal. Shiro gasped, his eyes blackened. The battle just now was too much of a burden for him. After all, the age is young, and the amount of chakra is not sufficient. However, the trick came out, and the victory was decided. Albia as a producer and burrowed into the ice. The feather who was watching the battle behind nodded in satisfaction and looked to the other side. Junmuru was not so lucky. He immediately judged that the threat of the strong man was greater, and took the initiative to stop this person so as not to pose a threat to the strong man to buy. But the strong man is more difficult than he imagined. Mainly. Can't move. Corpse bone vein, dance of Tang Song. Facing the strong man Yen Fist, Junmuru burst out dozens of bones and woven them into a shield to block it. Then he pulled out the bone of his left arm, turned it into a weapon, bypassed the iron arm, and stabbed it fiercely in the heart of the strong man. Corpse bone vein, Tsubaki no Mai, boom. Bones and rock walls burst with metal clashing. Didn't break the defense. Junmuru stepped back quickly, frowning. He didn't study as long as Shiro, and his basic physical arts were only at the level of lower ninja, and with his corpse bone vein, he might be able to fight against middle ninja. But in the end, the learning time is too short. And Shiro is still in the ice crystal magic mirror, trying to grind the girl to death, unable to support. Shizuku. The strong man shouted sullenly, wanting to go to the rescue. Junmuru took a deep breath and stopped. But this time it's more passive. At this time, there were footsteps behind him. Tsunade arrived with a witch in one hand and put the big witch down. There were two little furry thieves who sneaked up and found them. Tsunade fluttered lightly, his eyes looking at the battle between Junmuru and Shiro, a little surprised. Judging from the news that Shizun heard, the two children followed Fingyu not long ago, but the strength they showed was okay. Looks like it has good potential. Let me help them. Maitreya the witch sees Junmuru fall into passivity and knows that the two children are about to lose. She raised her hand and prepared to activate the palace formation, but was stopped by Fangyu. Look again. Maitreya couldn't bear it, but it was difficult to intervene without permission. During the field, Junmuru was already covered in injuries. When the strong man saw the rescuers coming to help, he was anxious to escape, and he started more and more very hard. Anyway, Junmuru couldn't break the defense, and simply opened and closed the attack. When Junmuru reached behind his back and held the tip of his spine, Fingyu knew that it was almost the same. At this moment, two strange chakra fluctuations came from the distant woods. Two black snake-like things, swimming quickly. Get into the back of the neck of girls and strong men. The two of them shook their bodies, and a strange chakra was injected into their bodies. Water escape, water dragon art. The girl trapped in the ice mirror quickly froze, and a water dragon drilled out from the soles of her feet and broke through the magic crystal ice mirror. The strong man was covered in black skin, and his whole body swelled, turning into a beast-like monster. Is it similar to Spell Mark II? Fangyu speculated in his heart. The strength of the two skyrocketed, and Shiro and Junmuru were not opponents. He clasped his thumb on the hilt of the knife and flicked his fingers. Boom. The sword came out of its sheath, like a dragon's groan. The blade is sandwiched with golden light and spins away quickly. The girl could not hide and was directly cut off her head. The strong man was so frightened that he quickly wanted to exit the monster state, but when he saw the direction of the sword, he stabbed straight away. Phew. The knife pierced the strong man's eyebrows. Frightened feather hook hand, chakra line returns with a tie knife, accurate sheath. Boom, boom. Two corpses slammed to the end. There were black snakes, coming out of their necks, trying to escape. but was nailed by Yu with bitterness. Episode 119, It's night, no thrills. Several people cleaned up the battlefield. Tsunade's face became solemn from the moment the black snake appeared. She put on gloves and squeezed the black snake in her hand. The black snake was injured and lay limply in the palm of her hand. Is it the conduit used to transmit chakra? It's actually teleported through a living thing? What is the source of chakra? Tsunade is a professional offender. In the afternoon, I vaguely heard the witch Mithriya say that the contemporary Huangquan will do strange tricks, and she has not taken it seriously. Now it seems that this strange method is somewhat related to medical ninjutsu. Medical ninja is not only about treatment, surgery, medicine, but also battery life. It's just that the battery life is too high-end, and few people will. Tsunade's endurance is also limited to herself, her in seal, 100 hero technique, and so on. And their injuries. Tsunade directly picked up the two corpses, and by the way, piled the two people who attacked the witch here. She followed the autopsy. All four were veterans of the battle, with old injuries on their bodies. Tsunade looked at their wounds and found that there were basically no minor injuries, or direct healing, and the way to deal with major injuries. Sure enough, that Huangquan can heal ninjutsu. And the level is high. However, it's a bit different from regular medical ninjutsu. It's too rough. Tsunade pulled out a scalpel from his waist pouch and raised it. Frightened, Mithriya quickly covered Ziyuan's eyes, but the little guy was bold and looked over there from his fingers. But soon, Tsunade frowned. Handing the knife to Jiao Yu, "You come." Frightened, you thought of Tsunade's fear of blood and did coolies. "No way, distressed lady." When the autopsy was completed, the frank feather was washed clean with water. Tsunade glanced at him slightly in surprise, and the resentment that had arisen earlier because of Shuren's prophecy dissipated a little. The two took a closer look at the corpse. Not only Tsunade, but even Fenga, who did not understand medical ninjutsu, frowned. The four corpses were not very old, and there were even young girls, but the internal organs were dull and decaying. It seems that power will squeeze the vitality. Marvel sighed. Indeed, and seriously. This group of people will not live more than 30 years. Tsunade concluded. Yu shook his head and stopped paying attention. He originally wanted to see if something similar to the spell mark could be used on his filthy soil rebirth. But since it is necessary to use it with vitality, people who are reborn in dirt have no vitality and basically cannot use it. When used on living people, it may work wonders. But at present, their subordinates each have housekeeping skills, and the cost performance is not high. Instead, he can let Tsunade study and ration the dark part. Is the corpse still used? Yu asked. Tsunade shook his head, he understood everything he should have understood. For more in-depth problems, it is impossible to study a few corpses, or after finding Huangquan. No need for me. Feather took out the scroll and released 2 white spores of the body. Tsunade guessed what he was going to do, and his heart tightened, and he paid attention urgently. It's one thing to hear about the resurrection of the dead, and it's another thing to actually see it. She has someone who wants to be resurrected, and she is naturally nervous. Frightened by the old craft, quickly sealed. Through the flesh and blood of the deceased, the souls of 2 of them were summoned from the spirit world. The white of the spores gradually covered with a layer of ash. After the body was formed, it was 2 excellent sparring sessions for Shiro and Junmaru. But the unexpected happened. The 2 corpses just got up and regained their senses. Inexplicably, there was a pulling force, tearing away the ashes on the 2 people, half of the 2 white spore bodies, and one side of the ash body. It was as if there were 2 different forces in the volley, tearing at their bodies. And the soul? The 2 roared silently, like madness. A horror mime was staged. And then, phew, the 2 fell at the same time, their bodies half white and half black, and their faces were dull as if they were mentally retarded. Tsunade couldn't help but shiver. The previous plan to revive the rope tree immediately dissipated. Yu frowned and pondered for a moment. It seems that we have to hurry up and act, and the big snake pill knows that I am here. Tsunade wondered, how? Yu removed the dirt rebirth and frowned. There is no problem with the dirt rebirth technique just now. The problem is on their souls, and someone summons me at the same time. The only people alive at the moment are me and him, and presumably he also knows that I am nearby through this. Don't rest tonight, hurry. Near Numonokuni, a cave. A faint candle light up the surroundings. Beside the big snake pill, there were 2 people who looked demented. It was the 2 who were summoned at the same time as Yu. The big snake pill beckoned to withdraw the filthy soil rebirth, and by the way, he threw the sacrifice to the snakes. He stroked Kuwu with his hand, thoughtfully. Opposite him stood a man with rough black hair and a beard. It is the contemporary Yellow Spring. Huangquan looked at the 2 corpses floating in the snake group, his face was gloomy. This is the technique you were talking about? The big snake pill did not defend, and his eyes flickered. He has used the soil rebirth thousands of times, and naturally, he will not go wrong. The only explanation is that there is a problem with the souls of the two, and it is present. Orochimaru thought of the wave feng shui gate he saw in Konoha, and roughly guessed. He smiled with jealousy. The reinforcements that the witch invited this time are interesting. Huang Quan said dissatisfied, didn't you say that your organization is at least shadow level, and a rescuer invited by a witch is not difficult for you, right? Orochimaru took a deep look at him. Naturally, I will help you do it. Anyway, dark medical ninjutsu has learned the hand. Orochimaru had a retreat in his heart. Since this product does not know the depth. After Huang Quan left, Pocket walked out of the shadows and looked at the corpses in the snake group with trepidation. Is Uchiha frightened here? He had a certain understanding of the rebirth of dirt, and he guessed it wisely. Orochimaru nodded, thinking. This time I came here to solicit Huang Quan. By the way, I secretly learned dark medical ninjutsu. And Huang Quan, this person is too obsessed with what kind of witch. What is the use of this uncontrollable power even if you get it? The reason why Orochimaru can continue to stay here is nothing more than curiosity about what the army of eels and ghosts in the history books is. But since the one from Uchiha is here, it is better to leave him some gifts and slip away early. He clapped his hands. In the darkness, a figure came out again. But it was Asuma, who defected to Konoha. Compared to when he was in Konoha, Asuma's whole person was much thinner. The eyes were also bandaged. The big snake pill played with the taste. Uchiha frightened feather is here. Do you want revenge? Episode 120, 3 days later. Under the ancestral hall of Numa no Kuni. A middle-aged man looked at the entrance, his heart surging. Quick, get in. A hurried voice sounded inside his body. The voice is full of longing, tyrannical. After listening respectfully, Huang Quan quickly rushed into the basement of the ancestral hall. The underground space is so wide that it can even accommodate a small town. The air is filled with the smell of sulfur. The ground has only spiderweb-like pathways, and the road is flanked by magma pools. In the center of the spiderweb, there is an empty platform. On the platform lies a coffin. Huang Quan ran all the way and touched the coffin excitedly. On this day, he has waited too long. It has been 1,000 years since the eel strayed into this world, and he thought he could rule the whole world. Who knew that after passing through the plane, its body split in two, transformed into both good and evil. The good side became a witch. The evil side was sealed in this ancestral hall by the witch herself, and there was no day. He never thought that it was another self who defeated him. But now, the witch's strength has plummeted for thousands of years. But himself, as long as he can be resurrected, he is still strong. Quick, let me out. A hurried voice sounded from Huang Quan's body again. Huang Quan hurriedly unfastened his coat, picked up a scalpel and opened his stomach. His body seemed to be just a skin sack, and there was no blood in his abdominal cavity, not even organs. But a purple-black cloud floated out, condensed into the appearance of an evil dragon in the air, and burrowed into the coffin. The coffin began to shake. The great earthquake trembled. Huang Quan sewed his abdominal cavity, only to feel his heart surging. The 1,000-year-old deeds have been completed in his hands. Next, only bring the soul of the eel and the body of the eel fused. At that time, the world is invincible. It looks like it only takes an hour for the fusion to be completed. That guy from the big snake pill promised me to guard outside the ancestral hall. I think there is enough time to come. But just in case. Ghost Army, move too. Huang Quan came to a huge pit. The giant pit contained countless stone mercenaries more than 2 meters high. Wake up. The mercenaries felt the breath of the eel, and their dusty eyes suddenly glowed purple. Huang Quan was like madness, chanting a mantra on it. The soldiers and braves became restless, and walked towards the outside of the ancestral hall with uniform steps. There are more and more mercenaries, more and more. That giant pit is like a portal, with an inexhaustible number of soldiers. Soon, tens of thousands of soldiers and mercenaries lined up outside the ancestral hall. Boxy, you can't see the edge at a glance. Huang Quan raised his arms and shouted. The warriors carry their weapons and move slowly but unstoppably towards the land of ghosts. The army of ghosts reappears, leveling the ninja world. On the other side, 20 miles outside the ancestral hall, the group approached quickly. Tsunade carries the little witch Aster. Fright Feather carries the great witch Mithreya. The great witch said that she didn't want Feng Yu to be near her daughter. But for safety, for the sake of hurry, it can only be so. Shiro and Jumaro panted and reluctantly followed. After being reborn in the dirt that day and accidentally letting the big snake pill know the location, the group set off overnight, and even the people of Snow Ninja Village were too lazy to wait. For 3 days in a row, almost no sleep. Fortunately, Feather and Tsunade both have immortal bodies, and powerful physique can support columns. The big witch and the little witch are extremely tired, and they can still take a nap on the back of the two. Shiro and Junmuro were uncomfortable, almost exhausted. How far is it? Frightened Feather upside down taller than him, plump big witch. Soft elastic. The big witch said in embarrassment, the black mountain in front is it. Mithriya seriously suspected that this kid ate his own tofu. She can't help it yet. She is the main force of the sealing evil and cannot but come. Aster is also not safe to put in the palace, it is better to be safe around these two powerful ninjas. And after Ziyuan's prophecy, she didn't dare to let this kid get close to her daughter. Fang Yu also wanted to laugh 2 words to relieve the fatigue. But soon, he looked stunned. Knock knock. The earth trembled. In the distance, flocks of startled birds streak overhead. Listen carefully, there are neat and uniform footsteps ahead, as if thousands of troops are coming towards you. The witch Mithriya turned pale, and she lost her concentration for a moment. Yes. Army of ghosts, the army of ghosts has awakened. Doesn't that mean that the eel has also awakened? Mithriya's body softened, lying on the back of the frightened Feather. It's late. Feather flipped the big witch again and enjoyed a bit of free fall. Without waiting for Mithriya to speak out in shame, he laughed, if you can't stop it, kill it. Mithriya shifted his attention and sighed, impossible, no one in this world can kill it. Her gaze gradually became firm, and she took the initiative to lie down and whisper in Fengyu's ear, I will be sent in later, maybe there is still a little hope. As a witch, Mithriya knows some secrets. The witch and the eel are one. If she can cast the sealing technique in time, she can successfully seal with the eel. The price is that in the endless river of time in the future, she and the eel will be trapped in the dimensional space forever. Fengyu guessed what she was going to do and shook her head slightly. This silly witch, times have changed. Who said that a ray must not be killed? However, he did not persuade much, and if he persuaded her, she would not listen. After Mithriya made up his mind, he took out a bell from under his neck. She hung it around Fengyu's neck. After sending me in, you will come out. This thing, please help me transfer it to Ziyuan. Although she felt that at a young age, she had a tendency to spend a big turnip, but it did not prevent her from acknowledging the strength of Shakyu. This is the person who can be dispatched by Tsunade, one of the 3 shinobi. Feather picked up the bell and sped forward. When they came to a high slope, the group stopped. Down the high slope, there is an endless stone forest. The army of ghosts under black pressure is approaching, which is quite spectacular. Fang Yu glanced at the direction of the Black Mountain Ancestral Hall and shook his head slightly. It seems that it can't be bypassed. He looked back at Bai and Junmuro, who were about to faint. The plan has changed. You two rest for a while, and then you will take Ziyuan back and pick up the people from Snow Ninja Village. This army of ghosts does not seek to kill all, but at least to block it. Otherwise, in less than a day, they will reach the first human village in town, and then they will only be killed. Fengyu carried the witch on his back and looked at it. Seeing the back of the ghost army, there seemed to be several figures guarding the door. He and Tsunade looked at each other. A nod to the head. Rushed down. Episode 121, Chidori Sharp Gun. The 10-meter-long thunder sword came out of his hand. Lei Dun, who had a strong stabbing ability, stopped after passing through 3 or 4 mercenaries. Fang Yu's expression froze, and he stepped on the head of the mercenary forward. The mercenary defense is amazing, but the speed is slow. Although a single ninja who can't help shinobu above. But this amount. If you make up hundreds of thousands of millions, it's really hard to say how many people in the ninja world can live. Maybe using filthy soil to reincarnate the army is a good strategy. The people reborn in the dirt chakra are endless, and they are immortal, and they are just right to deal with the army of ghosts. Both sides may be able to fight until the sky is wasted. However, before there is an army of filthy earth rebirth, the army of ghosts must be solved. The ill must be solved. Pave! Fengyu shouted. Tsunade's monster force blasted away a circle of mercenaries, and it was sealed for a long time. Mudun, birth of the tree realm. Vast expanses of woods rise from the ground. Tsunade feels the flow of chakra in his body and manipulates chakra to turn. The forest expands from a circle, instantly folds, and paves a forest avenue all the way forward. Feather stepped on the head of the mercenary and jumped on the branch. Rush forward with Mithriya. It seems that in the future, I will have to get a means of transportation, preferably flying. Fang Yu complained, clasped Mithriya's thighs with both hands, and turned all the way. After almost half a minute, the forest stopped in front of Montenegro. Tsunade rushed far to this side, but it seemed that he was exhausted to the limit. However, there is a chakra stored in the Yin seal, which is enough to support the next battle. The one above is Huangquan. Mithriya noticed that halfway up the Black Mountain, there was a figure standing there, directing the mercenaries. Fengyu nodded and didn't pay any more attention. Perception, Huangquan used chakra, and did not react much. About elite upper shinobi. The real threat was the 2 people at the door of the ancestral hall. Dirt reincarnator. 500 meters. 300 meters. Two figures moved. One actually flew directly above the canopy. One came from below, and the figure was hidden among the mercenaries and the woods. Cut. The feather route remains unchanged and continues to move forward. After crossing the branches, the figure transforms into multiple doppelgangers. Each one is a wooden doppelganger, and it is difficult to distinguish between true and false. Yikes. Under the woods, there was a lot of smoke. There was a faint splash of Mars in the smoke, like smoke from rapid combustion. Ash accumulation? Fing Yu frowned. This trick reminded him of a person. Apefly asthma. He recalled that the figure he had just seen was indeed somewhat similar. This guy, defected to the big snake pill? Frightened in thought. Click. There was a crisp sound below. The pervasive smoke suddenly became violent, and Mars burst, producing repeated explosions in the smoke range. Feather lifted Mithraya's belly and threw it high in the air. Odd dash, Mithraya flew in the air and subconsciously exclaimed. Which has the appearance of the head of a country. Frightened Feather ignored it and quickly sealed the print. 5 elements water escape water array wall. A lake surges up from the ground, and the lake quickly rolls up, engulfing the entire exploding smoke into it. Whoop ho, a large amount of water vapor gushes, generating high temperatures and rising upwards. Frightened into the air and, ready to catch the falling Mithraya. Suddenly, he sensed a large collection of chakra in the sky above. From the gap in the canopy, a white cylinder can be faintly seen, aimed at Mithraya. The art of stripping the original realm. The second generation of Hokage, none? The white chakra of the cylinder is about to envelop Mithraya. The cylinder looks soft and silent, and is actually extremely destructive. Dust escape is a technique that is above the blood succession limit. Blood succession elimination with triple changes. Even Susanoo can't resist. Fong Yu wrinkled his eyebrows and threw 2 flying thunder god Kumu in front of him. At the same time, launched the flying thunder god and flashed behind Mithraya's thigh, which also has his flying thunder god mark. Flying thunder god, second stage. Fly again. Flashes twice. Catch Mithraya at once. Once back to the bitterness that is flying. However, at this moment, a figure burst out from the ground. Asthma Phone cut off a wooden doppelganger, and at the same time, broke through the water and came to the front of the feather. Trouble. Frightened Yu tied the great witch Mithraya behind him, and the two were clinging closely. At the same time, the tie knife is ejected, and at the same time it is controlled with a metallic chakra wire. Boom. The knife and the finger tiger touched, and sparks splashed. Fong Yu's fingers moved slightly, and the golden blade shot out 3 meters long, turned around, and quickly cut it. It's like a master of knife art, wielding a knife. Ding ding. The sound of collision continued one after another. Frightened Yu was not surprised. Asthma, this guy, actually caught it? I haven't seen it in just over a month, this guy has improved so much. A picture flashed in Fing Yu's mind, it was what the wooden doppelganger saw after being cut off by Asthma. In the boiling water, the bandage on Asthma's eyes fell. The exposed eyes are red. In the pupil, a triangle appears. Kaleidoscope Sharingan? This is even more surprising than hearing the eel. The kaleidoscope of evolution of the Uchiha family is already difficult. This guy transplanted the Sharingan, and Frightened Yu can understand. But where did the kaleidoscope come from? 2 figures flashed in Fong Yu's mind, Big Snake Pill. And Shin Uchiha. Uchiha Shin is not a real Uchiha person, but a test product for the Great Snake Pill. In the original short film, Orochimaru is obsessed with Sharingan, and uses the experimental body in his hand and the few remaining Sharingan to cultivate a clone. And this clone has a kaleidoscope. This guy started the experiment early? And it worked. Fong Yu's brows furrowed slightly. Ha 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 ha, I didn't expect you to show this expression. Asthma stood in the way, and after laughing, he said word by word, Uchiha, frightened feathers. Fong Yu nodded with a heavy face, I really didn't expect it. Asthma looked crazy and said, aren't you Uchiha frightened by relying on a pair of eyes to play tricks? No, I had the same eyes as you. The old grudge, it's time to end it. However, Fong Yu shook his head slightly. He scoffed, you seem to have misunderstood something. To my surprise, the scientific literacy of the Big Snake Pill is higher than I thought. As for you. Although the kaleidoscope is strong, it also depends on who is in the hand. The voice just fell. Fong Yu had already appeared behind Asthma. One knife, piercing the heart. Asthma's eyes widened and she froze in place, why, I can't see clearly. Randomly, he reacted. Frightening Yu did not use the transience technique. Rather, flying Thor. But where did the coordinates come from? Asthma's gaze focused on the tip of the knife and saw Kuwu pierced behind his heel. That bitter Wu was the other one that Feather threw out at the beginning. has been lurking in the mercenary group, controlled by the chakra line. Episode 122. Nope, I still have a chance. I obviously have a kaleidoscope. I'm not willing. Asma clutched the knife in both hands, her face unwilling. In order to take revenge on Yu, he chose to abandon the village. Abandoned the family. Endured a month of life and death experiments. The big snake pill cut tens of thousands of knives on his body and gouged his eyes hundreds of times. Tons of potions were injected. That kind of pain, as the second generation of shadows, he has never experienced 1 in 10,000 before. But he persevered. He wants to find Uchiha frightened you. Beat him head on. Take back Konoha. Recapture the Sunset Red. He believes that the indestructible faith will eventually be realized in the future. Almost instantly, it shattered. The gesture of being easily defeated is just like back then. Unalterable. These eyes have a bit of research value. Yu backhanded and took Asma's new equipment. Thank you Chiri for sending eyes. Asma held in despair. Wu in the sky wanted to support, but was stopped by 3 wooden doppelgangers. Yu smiled and said, it seems that for the sake of sending equipment, I will tell you some news for free. Your eldest brother Shinnosuke, I killed it. The Book of Seals, in my hands. Asma made a ho-ho sound in pain, holding the tip of the knife in her heart, blood dripping. Yu continued, but for 3 generations, it was your benefactor Orochimaru who killed him. In the next life, don't take revenge, that's not right. You're not going to have a next life. Frightening Yu's palm flipped, and the heavenly tribulation thunder escaped. The black electric snake attached the blade and slammed into an electric shock. Asma's body instantly turned into black scum. Out of one's wits. At this time, above the head, the 2 wooden doppelgangers left by Yu were also stripped off by useless dust. Mithriel lay behind the feather and was anxious. She could clearly feel that the power in the ancestral hall was constantly increasing. And Yu looked at Wu, a little annoyed. This kind of flying guy is only as good as space ninjutsu. No headache like that. Because Feather is a person who knows space ninjutsu. The first and second Rippy looked at each other. First hand, in the handsless. Since you can't attack the dust, use the ninjutsu that you can attack. Ordinary ninjutsu attacks can't be attacked, then it must not be big enough. Wu Shuang slapped his palm, willfully mobilizing the infinite chakra brought by the rebirth of dirty soil. The art of to-do in gang style. The whole stone forest shook. In general, after experiencing the devastation of Mu Duan, he once again enjoyed the treatment of earthquakes. The stones kept gathering into a pile. Even the ghost mercenaries were squeezed together by the stones. Gradually, a stone giant about 50 meters tall appeared. Nothing falls on the shoulders of giants, and the mind is manipulated. The giant first picked up dozens of mercenaries and smashed them towards Yu. After being easily dodged, the giant jumped suddenly, and the sky shook. It fell to the position of the feather and the big fist of the house swung over. At the same time, there are no seals of hands, and a large range of stone kunai is prepared. Feather dodged by the flying thunder god, while arranging new coordinates again. The giant's several random punches, coupled with Wu's mending knife, made it impossible for Yu to perform ninjutsu. It seems that only Gundam can defeat Gundam. Frightened Yu opened the kaleidoscope, and a black light like flame burned on his body. The giant smashed head-on. Yu dodged again, but felt an inexplicable heart palpitation. He did not hesitate and accelerated the output of pupil power. Buzz, a white cylinder struck from behind. The skeleton Susa that Feather had just erected quickly dissolved. But this moment was enough for him to react a second time. A flying thunder god once again opened the distance. He stared at the second nun and frowned slightly. This avatar, when? Yu's gaze kept paying attention to the entire battlefield, but he didn't see how Wu approached him through the doppelganger and almost completed the sneak attack. Images of the battle flashed quickly through his mind. When the giant punched, I had already adjusted my position. No, there is a blind spot. Feather turned his head and smelled a fragrant wind. Mithriel's noble and beautiful face is close at hand. She also looked at him blankly. Yu gave him a blank look. The blind corner of his vision was this big witch. 1.75 m Mithriel lying on his back, head moved to that side, and a new blind spot would appear there. It is worthy of being the second generation of tying, and he has rich experience in on-the-spot combat. I actually grasped this. Almost killed by one hit. Yu's heart was awe-inspiring. Second, it's a waste of time. For guys who can fly, you have to drive Gundam to the point where you can fly. The black skeleton on Yu's body was hanging. At this moment, the black mountain not far away suddenly swelled. Countless purple rays burst out from the cracks in the rocks. A sinister and ghostly power filled the entire heaven and earth. The purple light trembled and contracted slightly, as if breathing. This is? Jing Yu felt the power that was completely different from chakra, and frowned. That was the power of the eels. Maitreya lay on him, his body trembling. The eel has completely awakened, Fang Yu silently estimated. If the power in the Black Mountain is converted into chakra, there is already the amount of tailed beasts. Considering that the power of the eel is relatively difficult, it is difficult to destroy it. Maitreya seemed to have guessed his thoughts, and said bitterly, this is not its full strength, the other half of its body is in another world. When it is fully present, even I will have a hard time sealing it again. Time. Not enough. Maitreya's mind flashed Ziyuan's smiling face, and he sighed. Later, you can only fight for your life. Don't ask for a complete seal, but ask to give them a chance to attack. Rumble. A boulder with a diameter of 10 meters fell over. Feather pulled out the knife. At this time, a figure flashed over. Bang. The boulder shattered. Tsunade appeared in front of him. At this time, her face and body were covered with black and purple lines. She has already opened the Een seal. Leave it to me here, you go first. Tsunade left a strong back for Fenga. Clenching his fists, he angrily scolded the 50-meter-tall giant. There was no one to entangle, and Fang Yu carried Maitreya to Montenegro. Hee, that guy from the Big Snake Pill is really unreliable. I actually ran ahead of time. The helpers who remain, the same week can. On the mountainside, Huang Quan breathed in the power of the eel. Devour the power in it, wash your body, abandon chakra, and replace it with the power of the eel. Seeing that someone wanted to break in, Huang Quan waved his hand. Purple-black dragons appeared in the air. Huang Quan stepped on the purple dragon and looked down proudly. The eel is out. The world is ours after all. Episode 123, Stupid Ninja. Stupid chakra. It's just a defective product. The world needs more power, and I, too. Huang Quan Royal Dragon in the Sky, fanatical declaration. He seems to be the spokesperson of the eel. You are so strong, why are you always sealed? Fang Yu looked at the dragon, envious in his heart, and naturally did not have a good face when he spoke. Huang Quan's face froze, and he looked at Maitreya with hatred. All because of this woman, no, the ancestor of this woman. If it weren't for them to obstruct their own people, the early days of ninjutsu development would have been replaced by the power of the eels. The world has long been a Selen. Huang Quan sneered, this time, you can't stop us. Lord Rei's strength, climb to the top again. And you, passed down from generation to generation, have long since disappeared. Jing Yu felt that the big witch's hand was shaking, worried about her impulsiveness, and said softly, don't be provoked, wait for the opportunity. Under his feet, there were constantly FFF characters, passing through the gaps, bypassing the purple dragons, and climbing towards the ancestral hall. It's just a small action. The entire ancestral hall is my territory. Huang Quan snorted coldly and waved his hand to chop into the air. The purple dragon under the seat opened its mouth and spewed out a purple flame, melting the marks on the ground and the surface. Fang Yu glanced at the marks on the ground. Where the purple flame sprayed through, crystal glass was left. This level of flame was powerful enough to threaten him. The power inside the ancestral hall is visibly expanded. Time waits for no one, and the frightened black skeleton is entangled, protecting Maitreya. Outside the black skull, muscle meridians quickly formed, pulling out into a 20-meter-tall black giant. Stand firm. Fang Yu freed his hand and shouted. Susanoo pulled the knife forward. Black double knife, Li Suo cut off several purple dragons. But with just one breath, the purple dragon recovered again, as if it was immortal. Seeing this, Huang Quan laughed on it, Chakra's inferior power can't hurt the eel. Stop doing useless work, Fang Yu secretly recalled. In Naruto's death, the last to solve the half-adult eel, although it was a spiral pill, but it was a spiral pill with the power of the Aster Witch. It seems that ninjutsu alone really cannot shake this power. For example, the mass density of ninjutsu is only as large as an eggshell. The power of the fairy, the power of the eel, the power of the 9 tails, the density and quality are close to stone. The 3 can be put together. But ordinary chakra's ninjutsu can't really shake it. Although Susa's power is more powerful than ordinary chakra, the third form is almost meaningful. Is it necessary to have the same quality technique? Fang Yu thought about it and crossed from the palm of his hand to Jing Dun chakra. Although it is also chakra, the 5 elements golden dun is always stronger than ordinary denjutsu. The 2 long knives in Susa's hand were also dyed gold. Huang Quan laughed, no matter how hard you struggle, it's useless. Wait to meet the full-fledged eel Sama. Fang Yu shook his head slightly. Control Susa and turn slightly sideways. 2 golden knives, one in front and one behind at the side. A string of FFF characters, climbing the blade. Uchiha Ryu, flying thunder slash. Fang Yu twisted his waist violently, and the knife in his left hand came out. Spinning all the way, he threw up more than a dozen purple dragon heads and rushed towards Huang Quan. The purple dragon at Huang Quan's feet moved slightly, dodging the sword. He smiled disdainfully, and Yu Guang looked at the throwing knife. Then, he was stunned. He guessed that the throwing knife would spin back, but he didn't expect it to be that fast. I didn't expect that it was not just the knife that returned. Flying Thunder God, second stage. Black Susa, appearing out of thin air. Grab the rotating blade with your left hand. 2 golden large knives fell in his hand, and this time, he was only 1 meter away from Huang Quan. Susa body rotation, 2 cuts. 4 cuts. 8 cuts. 16 knives. 32 knives. 64 knives. Huang Quan, together with the purple dragon, turned into silt. All kinds of strange organizations, mixed into a bunch of things that can't be seen directly. Huang Quan had an immortal body and did not die at the first time. But after all, he did not have the exaggeration of the immortal body of the flying segment, and it was cut so shredded that it could not be recovered, and only slow death awaited him. He was waiting for death, and he was also waiting for the power of the eel to resurrect the purple dragon. He wanted to watch the picture of Feng Yu being entangled in the purple dragon and devoured by Lord Ray. However, the purple dragon turned into mud. Motionless. How can it be? Chakra can't shake the power of the eel. Huang Quan was unwilling, but his consciousness, gradually blurred, finally became a pile of dead mud. But his mission has been accomplished. Montenegro burst apart. Revealed a rolling magma below. In the magma, an open coffin was like a portal. A purple light burst out and turned into a huge purple dragon. Tens of meters thick and nearly 1,000 meters long. The dragon's head looms among the clouds, towering over the earth. The frightened Susa was like an ant in front of him. This power is greater than the black unicorn. The feather was shocked and fell to the ground. Looking at such a huge dragon, he estimated slightly. In the words of the black unicorn, I am afraid it is difficult. Unless you make some preparations, or catch a rainstorm. Think again about a way. At this time, he felt a force rising up behind him. Frightened Feather turned around. The great witch Maitreya was wrapped in strange charms, and the whole person was bathed in holy light. Majestic power blew her hair up the top of her head. The whole person is also soaring into the air. Frightened Feathers jumped up, but were bounced away by a repulsive force. A complicated sigh came. The great witch looked nostalgically into the distance, and then raised her head high. The whole person soared into the clouds and looked at the dragon. Dusty her. It is impossible to ignore in the holy light. The eel looked defiant. You still look like you are ready to preach at any time. Unfortunately, I have already regained all my strength, and it is impossible to lose again this time. Maitreya said calmly, you and I are one, kill me, there will never be a possibility of going back. The eel laughed, so what? The world is small, but it's big enough to hold me. Maitreya raised his hand to make a seal, but it was a completely different seal from the ninja world. In addition to hand movements, the entire arm also dances. The eel looked at her with disdain, and sacrifice yourself to die with me? As I said, your current strength is only painful for me at most. Maitreya kept moving. It's enough to make you feel pain, and I'm sure they can seize the opportunity. The eel tried to stretch out the dragon claws, but could not penetrate the holy light on her body, and couldn't help but be secretly annoyed. It can hurt itself, but it can't hurt a witch. That's why it left yellow springs, like a game of rock paper scissors. The eel scoffed, is it worth sacrificing my life just to make me suffer a little slight injury? Maitreya looked solemn, and was about to speak. It's not worth it. A familiar voice sounded behind her. Frightened the feather and slashed the thunder and broke the holy light. Roughly interrupt Maitreya's casting. Domineeringly take her into your arms. Episode 124. You, what are you doing? Maitreya was about to cry. She didn't expect Feng Yu to come, and there was a way to break through the holy light. But the sealing technique is broken, what will happen to the eel? She had plucked up the courage and decided to die. Now this guy, but he doesn't even give himself a chance to die. What does the phrase, not worth it, mean? That I would rather destroy the world than die myself? Chaotic thoughts, intertwined into unspeakable emotions. Maitreya looked at the teenager in front of him blankly, and suddenly felt that she was not as disgusting as she imagined. Perhaps my daughter's prophecy was just misunderstood. Ha 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 ha. Seeing that the witch's seal was broken, he laughed loudly. I like human beings, and all my thoughts are on civil strife. Without the sealing technique, what are you going to fight me with? As if to confirm its words, the wind is raging in the sky. Thunderclouds rolling. A purple light lit up from the belly of the eel, sliding all the way to the throat. The eel leaned back and opened its mouth sharply. The purple flame spewed out for thousands of meters, clearing the clouds into a funnel-like shape. The location where Maitreya was located was completely engulfed. A few seconds later, the eel cut off the flame and smiled disdainfully. But soon, it realized something was wrong. The breath of the two little caterpillars has not disappeared. On the contrary, in the clouds, there is something faintly terrifying, which is constantly condensing. This made the eel panic in his heart. Because of this feeling, he smelled a familiar breath once. It's not the same, but that's the same power of rules. Thousands of years ago, it came to this world unexpectedly, thinking that it could dominate the world by its own strength. But the power of rules in the underworld divides it in two, turning it into two sides, good and evil. The evil one is him. The good ones are witches. Their infighting on both sides of the same body led to it being sealed intermittently for 1,000 years. Now smell the power of the rules, how can it not be afraid? The eel twisted uneasily, even wondering if he wanted to return to the coffin. But that underworld force seems to lock it. There is nowhere to run. This feeling of just sitting still makes it go crazy. Who the hell? The eel has seen the rolling black thunder gathering in the clouds. Like a sea of thunder, thunder waves rolling. The eel's eyes searched among the clouds, but to no avail. Finally, it lowered its head. Only then did I see the human who it laughed at just now, and the breath on his body was faintly similar to that of Lei Hai. This guy? It's actually a small human being? Fine death. Small human. The eel angrily spewed flames, and the purple dragon breath was like a heavenly punishment. However, a white light shield completely blocked the dragon breath. This time, it was Maitreya who took the initiative to hug Fingyu. You. Maitreya sensed what Fingyu was trying and hesitated. Can it work? Feeling the softness and body fragrance behind him, Fingyu rolled his eyes. You hugged it head on and tried it to see if I can't do it. Maitreya looked dazed. Although I don't understand, it's not a good thing to listen to the tone anyway. The pressure above his head was increasing, and the power of the eel was indeed much higher than expected. That force couldn't hurt her, but it was a great hurt to Fingyu, at least that's what she thought. And in fact, Fingyu opened the kaleidoscope at this time and turned on at this time. The current state is locked. Even if it is hit head-on, it will continue to recover. The pupil is inexhaustible, and life is endless. But since the big witch reported it herself, you still have to enjoy it. Feather moved in the arms of the great witch, found a comfortable position, and continued to control Chakra's output. The chakra in his body does not seem to be injected into the clouds. Whenever chakra was about to run out, he would expend his pupil power and restore his body to the full state it had just locked. With pupil power, in exchange for chakra. Then use Mu Dun and exchange pupil power. Endless, temporary perpetual motion machine. You can kill it like this? Maitreya felt Fangfeather's dishonesty, and two blush flew on his face. However, she thought that Fangyu was casting a spell, so she didn't think much about it. Kill? Shocking Yu thought about it seriously and replied, not necessarily. He arranged the thundercloud, not summoning the black unicorn. It's about doing something that the Hokage world may not understand. Name, crossing the robbery. Before he thought about it, rays are similar to demons in hometown mythology. This demon is close to the peak of the power system. Demonization into two different individuals, good and evil, isn't this similar to beheading 3 corpses? Thinking that he could threaten the power of the eel, a thought came to his mind. Since it's not easy to kill, then give the knife in your hand to Providence. Give you a thunderstorm. If the crossing fails, then it will be destroyed. If you succeed in crossing the calamity, you will fly up and get out. Moreover, in the immortal cultivation system, the chance of success in crossing the calamity is pitiful. So Fingyu decided to give it a try. The thundercloud is almost there. Fingyu's eyes were black, and chakra and pupil power were exhausted to the limit. Brilliant green light lit up on his body and turned into particles of light into his eyes. Hitomi power was replenished, he launched it this time again, and he was a good man again. The sky, rolling for tens of miles, is full of black robbery clouds. Huang Huang Tianwei made everyone's hearts palpitate. But the thunder and lightning did not come for a long time, and Maitreya was anxious to see it. She sensed an attack brewing in the feather, but she was still worried that it would not threaten the eel's life enough. Maitreya's eyes flickered, silently let go of the feather and prepared to face the dragon's breath against the current. But Fingyu grabbed her. Maitreya's heart warmed, but he still shook his head. I am one with it, I can't seal it now, but I can help you create a gap. Fangyu domineeringly pulled her back. You really take your own life worthless? Click, the sky finally thundered. Black electric snakes fell from the sky. The robbery ceremony is complete. Fangyu put his arm around the big witch, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. You're one with it? He shook his head. From today onwards, you are two completely unrelated people. The big witch smiled wryly. Ordinary people really don't understand, she and it are one and the same, no matter how many generations of inheritance it is. Suddenly, Maitreya was stunned. In the depths of the soul, a thunder sounded in the depths of the soul. Split the line between her and the eel in two. She lost contact with the eel, but got the whole meaning of life. That euphoria of life integrity made her heart pound. She glanced at the eel in the baptism of thunder, and then looked at the feather who was admiring the thunder. Her gaze stayed on his angular side face, gradually. Crazy. Episode 125, Razor rolling, black clouds, pressing the city. The farthest point of the stone forest, the edge of the black cloud. A large purple snake is entrenched on the stone forest, and two figures stand at the head of the snake overlooking the distance. Is this the force that appeared in the misty hidden village? The big snake pill looked solemn. That invincible eel in the mouth of the yellow spring, under the black thunder and lightning bath, is simply a pitiful little worm. But he knew that it wasn't a weak eel. It's that the black thunder and lightning are too domineering. The 10,000 snakes under his feet that were invincible in the Dragon Earth cave, just on the edge of the thundercloud, were trembling with fear. It's not like the power of this world. Orochimaru muttered, his thoughts mixed. The journey to the land of ghosts broke many of his stereotypes. For example, ninjutsu is not the only power in the world, such as there may be a world outside the world. For him, it was both uneasy and exciting. It's as if a scientist's formula has been falsified, but a new formula has been discovered. After the broken beliefs, the world ushered in. A flame burned in his chest. In this world, there are still too many stories to dig into. For these, he needs to live longer. Ahem. Ahem. The big snake pill's body trembled, and it took a long time to subside. During this time of studying dark medical ninjutsu, this body has not been able to support it for long. He stepped forward and respectfully handed over 2 pills. After waiting for the big snake pill to be taken orally, Pocket asked, "Do you need to find a Uchiha?" The development of the kaleidoscope has already taken shape and succeeded once. Although it lacks some functions from the real kaleidoscope, it is still a powerful plug-in, and if you find a Uchiha bloodline to make a new body, you may be able to truly exert the power of the kaleidoscope. The big snake pill calmed the chaotic breathing in his chest and muttered, "Let's look at the other materials. The existing Uchiha are all in Konoha." With Uchiha in shock, he didn't dare to take that risk. That kind of soul-stirring ninjutsu makes people palpitate when you think about it. The big snake pill looked back, and the dragon in the clouds was gradually unable to see it. Let's go. There's still a lot to do. I hope the organization doesn't let me down. Another edge of the stone forest. Several figures had just broken through an army of ghosts and rushed into the Mudu forest created by Tsunade. The thunder rumbling in the sky is disturbing. Several people did not know how the battle was going, and buried their heads in the pace. From a distance, seeing Tsunade stepping on something, he looked in the direction of Montenegro with an unhappy face. The leader hesitated to move forward, Tsunade-sama. His gaze moved down, and he also saw clearly what was under Tsunade's feet. Tsunade's feet were tangled with branches, binding a man covered in bandages. Dirt reincarnated? Oh? Kakashi. Tsunade heard the sound and turned around. The group was led by Kakashi. In addition to him, there is Uchiha Shursui, and Yuki Shinobu of the 3-person team, who looks very young. Shiro and Junmaro took the Aster. I think they went back to pick up the people of Snow Ninja Village. However, it is of little use for the time being. The battle is over. Tsunade stared at the pair of dog men and women who were clinging to each other, and snorted coldly. Kakashi followed his gaze, his eyelids jumping, as if he hadn't seen it. As for why Tsunade-sama reacted so strangely, he was confused anyway. Ahem. Kakashi turned around and beckoned to the squad he brought, sealed a man on the ground. The 3-person squad is not a familiar face, they are all recent or defective, or found in the land of snow, and their strength is not bad. The method of the 3 people to clean up the reincarnated people of the dirt is very rusty, but it is also very accurate. After all, when Snow Ninja Village started, dirt rebirth accounted for the majority. Have a certain understanding of how to deal with the rebirth of dirt. That dragon just now. Is Lord Fanga alright? Shursui thought about the picture he saw when he first arrived. The 1,000-meter-long dragon is too graphically shocking. Oh, whoever has something, he will not be fine. Tsunade waved his hand and turned away with the man. Thunder is at the center. Fang Yu watched the thunder gradually disperse and breathed a sigh of relief. It seems that the previous conjecture was correct. Since the robbery thunder is the heavenly thunder that crosses the calamity, it is only right to have the original function. So there is a picture of letting the dragon of the eel forcibly cross the robbery. The crossing is not just a lightning strike. It is more of a test of the body, soul, and Tao heart. Can't dodge, can't escape. To say that it is an attack is more like a force of rules. However, this does not mean that when you encounter an enemy, you can forcibly cross and rob the other party. This move is even more stringent than the requirements of the Black Qilin. Heavenly Tribulation Thunder, Black Qilin, just has requirements for Tianqiong. Either slowly brew thunderclouds, or wait for thunderstorms. And the Heavenly Tribulation Thunder, due tribulation, requires that the other party must be a creature standing at the top of the biological chain, and only a trace can break free from the shackles of the plane. Compare with the hometown immortal cultivation novels, that is, the cultivators of the tribulation period in the human world, the immortal kings of the immortal world, and so on. They are all people who stand at the top of a certain realm, or monsters. This gives Fang Yu a headache. Because the Hokage world does not have a clear concept of realm. At present, it is known that the only creatures that can forcibly cross the robbery are creatures like the dragon of the eel, which are not their own planes and have absolute power. Break your fingers and count, and the one who can forcibly cross the robbery in the future is probably 10 tails. And humans, super shadow level is not considered the top. 6 levels, it is not easy to say that it is the top. After all, they only cross planets, not planes. It's finally over. Maitreya sighed contentedly. Finding that he was still clinging to Feng Yu, his face turned red, and he hurriedly broke free. The feather is full of flesh and smell, which is evocative. Huh? What's that? Maitreya pulled the feather and pointed to the sky curiously. After the thundercloud dispersed, the remains of the eel's body drifted away with the wind. But there was a faint purple light that fell from the sky. When the purple light got closer and closer, Feng Yu found that it was not falling, but swimming in the air. That thing was slender and slender, a small dragon more than half a meter long. The body of the dragon is a crystal clear lilac, like an amethyst. It looks like a dragon, but it doesn't have that evil thought. The little dragon swam hard all the way and plunged into the arms of Feng Yu. Feng Yu raised his eyebrows, lifted the cold little guy upside down, and observed it carefully. Could it be that the crossing failed and returned to the initial state? It's not right, the breath on this guy is very soft. Reborn after the disaster? Xiao Long recognized the feather very much, and was not angry when he was carried upside down, but instead lay up on his back hard, as if he wanted to wrap his arms. It was born out of thunder. Thunder is its home. And Feng Yu is the user of the thunder, and as far as it is concerned, it is half a father. It's a little smaller, I don't know if I can fly when I grow up. Feng Yu shook his head with a smile and put the little dragon away. The purple dragon seemed to be afraid of life, wrapped around his arm and swam all the way, and finally hid in his sleeve, only sticking out a small head, curiously looking at this strange world. Episode 126, Land of Ghosts, Witch Palace. The battle of the evil is over, and the ghost army is once again turned into stone sculptures. The crisis is lifted. The people who rushed all the way finally got a chance to rest. When I first returned to the palace, the daimyo of Kumano-kuni came to visit. I originally wanted to talk about it well and get closer, but seeing that everyone was tired, I finally left 50 million follow-up commission money to leave. Everyone also simply ate a meal together and went back to rest separately. The witch's dormitory. After washing, Maitreya, the big witch, let the palace maid bring the little witch. Mother. The little witch Ziyuan wore a simple plain nightdress, her white arms wrapped around her beloved pillow, and she cried out sweetly, and happily rushed onto her mother's bed. 2 years ago, Xiao Ziyuan began to sleep alone. But a child is always a child, and if her mother does not chase her, she is happy to shrink in her mother's arms every day. Today is just an exception. Maitreya waited for the palace maid to leave, and blew the lamp. As soon as she got into bed, little Ziyuan wrapped up like an octopus, curled up in her arms, and hugged tightly. Maitreya held her daughter dotingly and scratched her little nose. Aster is not small, it's not good to be so sticky. Ziyuan's face was covered in her mother's arms, smelling the smell that made her feel very secure, and twisted like a piglet. I don't want to grow up, I will sleep with my mother in the future. Maitreya was amused and helpless. She had already anticipated how Xiao Ziyuan would not leave in the next few days, and when she was persuaded to go back, she would be crying and crying pitifully. Such a thing is not a one-time stage. It was already going to be put to an end. Make an exception today to let Xiao Ziyuan come over, there is really something she must figure out. Maitreya stroked her daughter's back and said in a more relaxed and ordinary tone, Ziyuan, who are the prophecies you saw that day? Elaborate. Ziyuan looked up from her mother's arms and tilted her head to look at her mother strangely. She acutely felt that her mother seemed to be different from before. Although her mother asked easily, Xiao Ziyuan always felt that her mother cared. Casually talk at night. Maitreya dodged his daughter's gaze, and his tone became as serious as possible. You see that Feng Yu and Snow Ninja Village have such a good relationship, and Snow Ninja Village is ready to cooperate with us. We must always know more about others, right? Xiao Ziyuan blinked, thinking that this seemed to be the truth. So he counted again with his fingers. Pale blonde old sister, that's the one with us. Big sister with long blonde hair. Big sister with black hair, big sister with black hair, big sister with long reddish-brown hair, big sister with long purple hair, big sister with long purple hair. The little Asters counted one by one. Every time he counted one, Maitreya felt that he had been hit by an extra arrow in his heart. She hurriedly stopped. Count carefully, don't repeat it. It's all two big sisters with long purple hair, okay? Xiao Ziyuan pouted and retorted, it's not repeated, it's just two big sisters with long purple hair. A purple with a redder a purple with a bluer color, oh yes, her eyes are very light, similar to white. Maitreya smiled bitterly and nodded, good, it's your mother who blames you. Xiao Ziyuan raised his chin proudly and continued to break his fingers. Maitreya saw that this momentum was gone, and quickly stopped, okay, don't count. She hesitated, didn't you say that I saw you inside? You take a closer look. This is a particular concern for Maitreya. When Xiao Ziyuan heard this, the purple light under his eyes continued to flow. One picture after another is clearly visible. She looked into the void as if she were looking at a picture. It's very similar to Ziyuan, but Aster doesn't know when this is the future. Anyway, it feels like it. When Maitreya heard this, he sighed slightly. She hugged her daughter and pondered how to deal with this future. Anyway, the accuracy of ancestral prophecies has always been 100%. There is no way to refuse, you can only force yourself to accept. Isn't it yourself? The rolling clouds flashed in Maitreya's mind, the back that people could rely on, the domineering hand. Ziyuan looked at her mother blankly, as if wondering something. Suddenly, she climbed up in her mother's arms and spread her hair. Maitreya looked back at his daughter suspiciously. Ziyuan stared at her mother, whose long hair was draped over the edge of the bed, and slapped her palms. Ah, it seems. Maitreya was stunned. What like? Ziyuan said, it's the picture in the future, and your mother looks like you now. Maitreya looked at the long hair that was originally tied high, but now held at will, and draped down, and the joy on his face came to life. A smile. It's like a person in a picture. However, her daughter's next words almost made her have a myocardial infarction. My mother was undressed like the other big sisters, and Ziyuan almost didn't recognize it. The other side. Fang Yu is the hardest one in this battle. After returning to the palace, I hurriedly washed and went back to my room. It's not a break. Instead, claim the reward first. Ding. The assessment task has been completed, chakra amount plus. Get an additional opportunity to improve your specific skills. Get extra random rewards. Random reward draw. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the Dragon Origin, Elementary. A copper-colored bead appeared in his hand. Fang Yu glanced at it and casually threw it to the ELD dragon, who was working as a loach in the basin. The little dragon jumped up with joy and swallowed it in one gulp. Then he rolled his eyes, belly up, and fainted. I don't know if the system has a warehouse inspection mechanism, and directly gives a thing to improve the bloodline of the dragon clan. It is useless for people, but it is a great compliment for the eel dragon. Although the little dragon does not know which world it comes from, it can be seen from the name that it is not a serious descendant of the dragon clan, and it is estimated to be a side branch. Although the dragon origin is a primary quality, it is enough to raise its life level to a notch and become a true dragon clan. Here comes the point. Fang Yu rubbed his hands. No matter how strong the foreign object is, it is a foreign object after all. In this assessment task, what he values most is the opportunity to improve his skills. At present, there are only two skills worth improving in his opinion, Kaleidoscope Sharingan, and Flying Thunder God. Kaleidoscope Riding Wheel Eyes, because there are no direct relatives, almost stuck on the way to the eternal kaleidoscope. But the experiment of the big snake pill on asthma gave him another hope. If you can make it, you can copy it. It shows that there is hope for the eternal kaleidoscope of evolution in the future. On the other hand, Flying Thunder God, Space Ninjutsu is extremely difficult to learn. Improvement is even harder. Even if there is a system, if you are lucky, if you smoke the proficiency of Flying Thunder God a few more times, it is estimated that you may be able to create new techniques in more than 10 years. But Fang Yu knew that the big event that changed the Hokage was within 10 years. Get it one step earlier, and you will have one more killing move. Ascend the Flying Thunder God. Episode 127, the next day at noon. The rested crowd was ready to go home in the afternoon. After a meeting, we originally agreed to have lunch together, but for unknown reasons, the eldest witch Maitreya did not come. Only the little witch Ziyuan obediently sat in the first place, looking at everyone with curious eyes, especially Feng Yu. The weird smirk in her prophecy picture. The strange Shu Huang looked serious at this time, and from time to time, took 2 orchid beans to feed the ill little dragon in his sleeve. After devouring the origin of the dragon clan last night, the little dragon shed its skin twice, and the dragon's body became more and more crystal clear, like a fine purple gem, and its temperament was more divine. Once made Fang Yu wonder if this product would lose the ability of the dragon of the eel. That army of ghosts, he is still hungry. That is the best war cannon fodder, besides the army of dirt rebirth. However, the eel spat out a mouthful of purple flame, shook its head and said that when it grew up, it could still control the ghost army, and Feng Yu breathed a sigh of relief and rewarded a loving touch. That's probably it, Snow Princess is very supportive in her attitude. Kakashi said for a long time, stopping to take a sip of tea. The matter of the snow country, because I knew that Feng Yu's side was also busy, so I didn't report it for a while. When you meet at this time, you naturally have to say a good thing. Roughly speaking, the Snow Ninja Village and the Snow Country get along happily, the village is developing well, the first batch of trainees are formally educated, and if they are successful, there will be a group of shinobi who can be used for tasks in 2 years. In terms of railway infrastructure, because the leaders of the country of bears and the country of ghosts know each other this time, it is easier to discuss. The railway of the land of snow has been extended to the border, and access to the land of Oni and the land of bears is readily available. How are the scorpions doing over there? Feng Yu asked. Scorpion. Kakashi didn't know what expression to use for a while, some admiration, some speechless. It seems that the wind reviews of the scorpion over there are polarized. Kakashi finally nodded. Scorpion's learning speed is fast, the engineers over there in the snow country, and the wind and flower Fu Tao have nothing new to teach him. Recently he improved the train power and increased the utilization rate of coal by half. The power system you mentioned earlier, Scorpion said that it is a little eyebrows, and it is being studied in a hurry, and it is estimated that it will take 2 years. In addition, the development of chakra armor, he also intervened, saying that it was a material problem and needed to find new wars to solve. That's pretty much it. Feng Yu nodded after listening, which was also in line with his expectations of the scorpion. The theory and hands-on ability of this product are exceptional. Seeing that Kakashi was about to stop talking, he smiled and said, in addition to the good, talk about everything else. Kakashi smiled wryly. Scorpion, he's okay in other ways, it's just can't get along with other people. Half of the engineers in the land of snow fell out with him, and the last time Feng Hua Fu Tao quarreled with him, he sealed it. It's not released yet. Frightened you couldn't laugh or cry. One dirt reincarnate, and another dirt reincarnate, quarreled over academic issues. As a result, one side directly physically blocks the other. Kakashi continued, but it's better now. Scorpion is addicted to electronic system development and won't take care of people for a short time. After chatting about the Snow Ninja Village, Tsunade, who had been drinking quietly, looked over. Kakashi and Shursui are here, and Tsunade also knows that in addition to Kirihide Village, Yuki Shinobu Village is also in the hands of Shock. Hearing what they said about the train and the chakra armor, Tsunade was a little moved. Such a good thing, doesn't Konoha have a share? Tsunade looked at Fenga. Feng Yu shook his head. It's not necessary for the time being, the chakra armor is relatively backward now, and it is only suitable for small-scale dress. When you refine a little more, and even change from armor to equipment, then consider popularizing Konoha. Tsunade nodded and looked at Kakashi again. What about you, Kakashi? Since Konoha has changed the sky, do you want to come back? Although the previous battle was incomplete, Tsunade roughly calculated that Kakashi's strength was close to the shadow level. This is again without the use of external eyes. In less than 2 years, Kakashi can reach shadow level strength with basic skills alone. This kind of talent, 3 generations are willing to miss. She didn't want to. Kakashi hesitated, and after glancing at the feather, he shook his head slightly. Yuki Ninja Village is not fully formed, let's look at it in 2 years. The roots of the Kiki family are in Konoha. If he could, Kakashi didn't want to wander all the time. But now is not the time. Seeing this, Tsunade said no more. After all, it is the layout of Feng Yu, and she doesn't have much to meddle in even if she becomes Hokage. After lunch, the group was ready to pack up and leave. And Maitreya, the big witch who did not show up for lunch, finally appeared. Different dressing, let everyone's eyes shine. Maitreya is still wearing a fairy witch's dress, but there are many fewer hair accessories. Her hair is simply tied up, her sideburns are slightly messy and curly, and her long hair behind her is like a waterfall that falls to the crook of her legs. There is less unattainable, more intellectual and elegant womanly temperament. This look was specially dressed up according to her daughter's description of the future picture. Her eyes wandered, and from time to time she crossed the feather. Sure enough, he saw a hint of heat in his eyes. Madam, your hairstyle is dangerous. Feng Yu took a deep breath and suppressed the agitation of adolescence. Some people say that adolescent boys, that aspect of thinking is dirtier than the toilet. Feng Yu scoffed. But I have to admit that he does have a lot of dirty thoughts in his mind now. How many of you are going back? The great witch Maitreya spoke with sentimentality. The unchanging inheritance of thousands of years also brings the same boredom for thousands of years. If the country is set in stone, so is she. But now, the eel is extinct. The witch's mission ends, and she becomes an independent individual. Some things need to change. Maitreya beckoned and asked Ziyuan to come over. She led her daughter to Yu and said shyly, Maitreya has thanked her for all this time. Now that the situation has changed, the witch is no longer there, and there is no need to be bound here. Shuren is still young, I want her to follow you back to Konoha and learn something different. I don't know you. Would you like to take it in? This request is not excessive. Besides, Yu was also curious about whether the witch's sealing technique and the sealing technique of the Vortex family could touch any sparks. Merely. Madam, you are shy. Do you want me to take in your daughter, or you? Yu took the aster who was attached to his mother. Ziyuan knew her mother's decision last night, and although she was reluctant, she didn't make a fuss. In the afternoon, the group left. The Great Witch Maitreya saw them off and watched their backs fade away. I haven't been able to come to my senses for a long time. I don't know how long later, she returned to the palace alone. It was obviously not long after, but it made her feel that she was already different. She looked at the copper mirror, let him dress obsessively, smiled shyly, and refused to freshen up. But looking at it, the smile became more and more lonely. A daughter can try new things, but she also has to lead a kingdom and try to bring them a new life. This incident may consume her life. Think of this. A long sigh echoed in the empty palace. At this time, in the afterlight, she vaguely saw a line of ants lining up and climbing into the room. When she looked closely, she realized that it was a string of characters shaped like FFFF. This is? The Great Witch Maitreya vaguely remembered that she had this on her white thighs. She lifted the hem of her skirt and wanted to see again. Suddenly, a figure appeared in front of her. Before she could see it clearly, she felt that someone had pecked her face fiercely. Then she saw a feather with a wicked smile. I won't wipe it off this time. I'll come back when I have time. Without waiting for her to be embarrassed, the feather turned into a black light and left. But cold marks on the face. There is also the FFFF mark on the thigh, indicating that it was not a dream just now. Maitreya was ashamed and annoyed, and smirked and did not return to his senses for a long time. Episode 128, Konoha. Hokage Building. The succession ceremony of the 5th Hokage has just ended. It's not hilarious, but there are repercussions. After all, the new Hokage is an orthodox descendant of the Senju clan. It is also the first medical ninja to promote medical ninjas for the benefit of the ninja world. Only, it's a pity it's not him. Tsunade returned to the office, threw away the awkward cloak, and looked at Jing Yu with a smile. I didn't expect you to have such a high reputation. It was obviously she who stood in the C position, but Tsunade could notice that many people's eyes were looking at Feather. In that eye, it was all loss. It was almost shouted to push down Tsunade and support Yu to the top. If she hadn't had a bit of a foundation, she wouldn't have been able to sit down in this position. Yu raised his eyebrows. That's not it. Recently, from time to time on the road, he sneaked back to the land of ghosts, and Maitreya, the head of a country. A little bloat. Tsunade looked disdainful. The secret that he thought he was doing on this road was actually clear in his heart. Every time I come back, I wear a mature woman's body fragrance, and the luxurious sandalwood smell, and I want to know where this goods is going with my knees. At first, Tsunade felt strange. After repeating it 3 and 5 times, she also figured it out. It's right that the revitalization of the Thousand Hands clan needs to find him, but finding him does not mean that you have to have feelings. Well, just borrow a seat in a few years. He loves whoever he is with. Even she kind of wanted to watch him have fun, like a fire in the backyard or something. Tsunade looked at the desk next to him, where the big royal sister with long blonde hair was carefully packing up the papers, preparing to summarize the handover. Samui of Yunin Village? Tsunade's gaze moved down from that pretty face. That high-latitude mountain peak is a rare person who can threaten her status. Tsunade looked at it a little more, and suddenly smiled. Indeed, after all, the Great Witch of the Oni country is also devoted to you. I remember when you left, you went to her dormitory for a long time. As soon as the words fell, the blonde royal sister, who had been ignoring and caring about foreign affairs, suddenly raised her head. The light condensed into a knife, and the horizontal feather was shocked. Yu was stunned in his heart. He saw the smile at the corner of Tsunade's mouth, and he didn't know that this was a knife to kill. He avoided Dei's gaze and scolded Tsunade. I'm talking about state affairs. Tsunade leaned back in his chair comfortably, his plump thighs on the table. Then I really misunderstood you. The Witch of the Land of Ghosts is probably the most beautiful woman I have ever seen. It's a blessing to work closely with such people. Sammy's eyes were sharp, but his hands kept moving. Frightened and defeated. Why does this hand stain people's innocence? Who said it was in the dormitory? Obviously there is still a study room. He rolled his eyes and said with a smile, to say that the female ruler, Tsunade, you are also beautiful, the most important thing is. Frightened Yu's gaze moved down and landed in the flesh-white abyss. That gaze was substantive, and it was also warm, which made Tsunade's heart slightly flustered, and he quickly pulled on the trench coat. And Samui's gaze became more and more gloomy. As the woman who gets along with Fingyu the most, she knows the taste of this product too well. Tsunade, this woman on a par with her, is also a threat. The information is here, let's go back first. Sammy expressionlessly reported a large pile of materials from under the table, a mountain high. Tsunade looked at the mountain of books, and everyone was dumbfounded. I only felt that the position of the Hokage who sat down, burned. A trace of pleasure crossed Samu's eyes, and he took Fingyu's hand. Fingyu coughed dryly, felt at ease as a means of transportation, and left with Daife Thunder God. Tsunade pulled out a piece of information and looked at it, and the data on it was densely packed. Brain pain. Shizun knocked on the door at this time. He was also followed by the timid Hinata. Hinata came back one step ahead of Jiraiya and Shizun, and at this time it was also close to the age of signing up for school, and Shizun brought her here to officially confirm the relationship between Hinata and Tsunade. Tsunade liked Hinata very much, a talented disciple of the Hyuga clan. It's really good. Worship is naturally not a problem. It's just that this little girl's personality is too soft, many times softer than mute. Tsunade looked at Hinata, pondered for a moment, and suddenly said with a bad smile, Hinata, do you like your brother Jiaoha? Hinata's face immediately turned red like a bubble pot, but he nodded anyway. Tsunade sighed twice, frightened that guy, old and young, kill. Blah blah. The old lady is not old. Tsunade looked at her like a very bad aunt, leaning over and looking at her. There are many good girls around Fenga, you can't compete with them like this. Hinata looked at the flesh-white abyss in front of him stunned, and lowered his head in disappointment. Tsunade smiled and said, do you want to fight them? Hinata's head is tied lower, and he wants to bury it in the ground. The ears are even more red, as if ripe. Tsunade's fingers lifted Hinata's chin, if you want to fight, it's okay to be so shy. The master teaches you how to do it, do you learn it or not? Hinata didn't know how to answer, but the figure of Aster flashed in his mind. When Fingyu came back, she was followed by the little girl who was about her age. Hinata's fighting spirit rose and organized the language, brother Fingyu will not like to be too fierce. Big sister Hinata, seek cover. Tsunade laughed, if only you were fierce in front of other women. Hinata's fingers ruffled the corners of his clothes, weakening his head. Tsunade smiled in triumph. Shizun next to him covered his forehead. Finished. Little junior sister, you are on the thief's ship. After sending Hinata away, Shizun said helplessly, Tsunade-sama, don't forget that you still have to ask for Lord Yu. Tsunade's face was also slightly unnatural, and he coughed dryly, it's just one night, well, a few nights. Shizun thought of those things, her face was slightly red, and she continued, but then I have to agree to Lord Yu, in case he knows that you taught the little junior sister like that. What if he doesn't agree later? He didn't promise? Hud dash. Tsunade, who had just been screaming, suddenly froze in place. Like, yes. She was confident in her allure, but there was no shortage of equally good ones around that kid. Force him? It doesn't seem to be able to beat either. Tsunade was really panicked at this moment, how about finding a chance to get drunk on him? Shizun gave her a blank look. At their level, who can get drunk with alcohol? Tsunade figured this out and went crazy. Mess with the moment, chase the husband crematorium. Could it be that the old lady is cheeky and chases a teenage child? Tsunade was shy and angry. For the sake of the family business. Humph. Cheap that kid. On the other side, Fangyu returned to the small courtyard. As soon as he landed, he said seriously, I won't eat dinner, I want to study the 4 ways of riding the flying thunder god, no, study new usage. Dai looked at him quietly. Fangyu stiffened his steps and walked to the room with ease. Snap. Dai clapped his hands indifferently. The women who heard the movement in the courtyard walked in. Tingling of the scalp. This damageur field. Episode 129, Fingyu looked back, and behind Samui, big and small, big and small. Red Bean has been guarding him back, naturally there. After hearing the news, Red also came. Suzuki of the Dark Division, who was in charge of contacting Samui during this time, because Tsunade took over a lot of tasks, and today is to resign. Little Shuren is also there, and the little one has no one to rely on in Konoha, so he can only temporarily live in his house. Huh. I'll treat you tonight, feel free, feel free. Fingyu said hello in embarrassment, and the soles of his feet were smeared with oil. Slide. Samui sighed slightly, but did not chase again. She was just right. After knowing that he was under pressure to feather feathers, he stopped entanglement. It's just that. Samui looked at the red beans, red. There is also the little Aster that has just arrived. It looks like the yard is going to be expanded. Sam thought helplessly. Fangyu actually didn't go far, hiding in the backyard and taking a look. Seeing that they didn't mess up, I was lucky. Fortunately, they are all more considerate, not Tsunade short-tempered. Moreover, there is the big butler Sammy to grasp the scale. Dai knows the proportions very well to the outside world, and the big thing will not lose his face outside. At most, when there is no one in private, give yourself more faces, be screwed a few more times, or add some fierce ingredients or something when cooking. Without outside interference, Frightu began to experiment with the Flying Thunder God. Moreover, he is indeed studying the 4 writing methods of the Flying Thunder God. Flying Thunder God, after assessing the reward, rose a step. There is no obvious data to tell. But an analogy can be used. The former Flying Thunder God is a point. Is a coordinate. Now the Flying Thunder God is a line. In essence, it has become another technique, which Feather calls Falling Thunder God. Flying Thunder God is a coordinate point, a shuttle. The Falling Thunder God is to lift the pen and drop the thunder, is to drop the pen to draw a spatial line. And these days, Fingyu has been trying to find 4 different ways to write this line. Horizontal is open. Vertical is teleportation. Oblique for slashing. Point for spurt. Fangyu held his breath and stared, using the ether knife as a pen. A complex pattern of black FFFF patterns condensed on the tip of the knife. He waved his knife. An ink line appeared in the air. It's like a photo, a horizontal line is drawn. The horizontal line opened slightly, and inside was chaotic space debris. Falling Thunder God, horizontal Dao. Open up a space, if it can be perfected, maybe it can achieve the effect of storage space. As for how big it can be, and how long it takes, it will take time to grind. After all, Flying Thunder God also took 3 years to find the door. After a few seconds, the spatial crack disappeared. Fangyu changed his hand again, the tip of the knife pointing down. Cut a line in front of you. He stepped over, and the spatial line swallowed him up and disappeared. The moment he disappeared, Fangyu appeared 10 meters away, in the backyard. Falling Thunder God, vertical knife. Open up spatial channels, and achieve the role of space flashing. The advantage is to solve the disadvantage that Flying Thunder God needs to locate coordinates, and Flying Thunder God coordinates can abuse vegetables, but in front of real super masters, it is easy to be predicted. For example, the 4 generations of Thunder Shadow who have fought with Watergate before, as well as Wu some time ago, can grasp the landing point of the Flying Thunder God to a certain extent. But there are also disadvantages. First of all, the landing point is not easy to control and not accurate. But this can be solved with practice. The other disadvantage is, the same chakra consumption, the teleportation distance is much smaller than that of the Flying Thunder God. After all, from point to line, it is equivalent to many times higher output power, and correspondingly, consumption will increase many times. Suitable for combat, not for everyday use. Fangyu pondered the teleportation position of the Falling Thunder God vertical knife, and shook his head to skim it for the time being. That requires a lot of calculations and practice to master. It also takes time to grind. Feather swung his sword again. Slash. A diagonal line across the air. When Fangyu lifted his feet, he threw it over. The stone crosses the diagonal line and quietly turns into 2 halves. The incision is unusually flat. The perfect cutting technique. Falling Thunder God, slash knife. Take the spaceline as a slash. Invincible. Most importantly, it can hurt the space. Frightened, you thought of Obito. The blurring of the soil is to use space to dodge. And the God of Falling Thunder, oblique knife, can cut off space. If you encounter a skill similar to Obito, you can completely cut it in 2. Finally, Falling Thor, point the knife. The same means of attack. Narrower attack surface than the oblique knife, but also longer. It's time to study hard again. Fangyu divided into 3 shadow doppelgangers, and the 4 of them each specialized in a writing method of Falling Thunder God. A few days passed by the calm days. Tsunade finally got to work, pulling Shizune and Shikaku to slowly wipe out the pile of Hokage missions. I don't know if it was purely out of the intention of solving the work, Tsunade rehired Samui to sit in the Hokage's office. Dei became an honorable clerk. Help with all the affairs of the village every day, both internally and externally. Naruto's, she will pass it. And recently, the most interesting thing in the ninja world is the alliance between Yenin Village and Yunin Village. 2 villages, the former tearing his face because of Gu's incident and Konoha. The latter simply wants to kill Konoha and avenge the revenge of the year, but also for better interests. The 2 envoy groups came and went, and they had already finalized the alliance and wanted to start an offensive against Konoha. But one thing changed their strategy. The 2-tailed man Zhu Li of Yunin Village, the 2 Yumu people were assassinated. The 2-tailed cat again, taken away. The 4th generation of Thunder Shadow was furious, and joined forces with Yenin Village to investigate, and finally had results. It's an organization called Shao. The 3rd generation of Tokei Jinoki also found out that the 5-tailed man pillar force was attacked, which was also done by the Shao organization. So the two began to panic. Their village itself has two-tailed beasts, which are the treasures of their village. It's the nuclear weapons of the village. Now that the Shao organization has faintly revealed an extraordinary enthusiasm for the tailed beast, the two can only give up the idea of adventurous, all on the premise of protecting the last tailed beast in the village. A limited investigation of the Shao organization and pressure on Konoha. This undoubtedly greatly delayed the idea of the two shinobi villages wanting to join forces against Konoha. In addition to this, there are other news worth paying attention to in the ninja world. The railroad of the Land of Snow has been built to the Land of Ghosts. The country of ghosts, which has always been closed, seems to have made reforms, opened the door of the country, and embraced a new era. And the last thing that deserves Konoha's attention is the family's business. Ninja school, it's about to start. And the night before school started, Wei Feng Shui Man found Uchiha Feather. A look like he wants to say something. Episode 130, Feng Yu collected the knife and wiped his sweat. Naruto discharged from the hospital, right? Feng Yu looked at the Watergate strangely. Watergate's sluggish gesture is still rarely seen. Watergate nodded. Naruto is better, it's just emotions. That night, Naruto turned into the Nine Tails. Although it was done by Orochimaru and others, Naruto retained that memory after all. Naruto had tried his best to deny that the demon fox was a demon fox and that he was him. But after that night, the thought that the demon fox is himself took root in his mind. This is also the reason why he obviously recovered physically, but he did not wake up for a long time. Don't want to face reality. Now Naruto is discharged from the hospital, but the Sunshine Boy is no longer sunny. Watergate's face was full of concern, and he seemed to have made up some kind of determination. Tomorrow is the opening ceremony. He hopes to attend the ceremony as his father. Watergate appeared 2 months ago, but his identity for the public is dead 4 generations of Hokage and summoning of Feather. This time, he wanted to use another identity, Naruto's father. Seeing Watergate's determination, Feng Yu also guessed the purpose of his visit. It's time for them to be reunited. Feng Yu returned to the room and took out a scroll that had been prepared 6 years ago. Watergate knew what was coming, nervous and anticipating. Before, he didn't dare to let Gyoshinai summon Gyoshinai, because he was afraid that his wife would be too sad when she knew Naruto's situation. The first few months were a good time, but at that time, Feng Yu was not outside, just busy feet did not touch the ground, and the Watergate was embarrassed to disturb. Now Naruto's situation has exceeded the limit that Watergate can take care of. Maybe the family is complete and can bring different changes to Naruto. Over there, Feng Yu took out the few white spores left. Dirt reborn. When the spores gradually change into a woman's silhouette and the iconic red hair of the Vortex family appears, the feather is directly opened. A woman with a hot temper can't bear it. Sure enough, after a short cry in the backyard, a husband and wife battle began. A woman after marriage is really another creature. Marvel Yu sighed, suddenly a little curious. If the two of them are newlywed, then when is it? The body of the Vortex Gyoshinai is a with spores. Brother Watergate, is this considered to be on the tree? Frightened and smiling. Back in front, Samui was still busy working. There are now 3 children in the family. Little Sharon carefully studied the ninja seal. Bai and Junmaru, as senior brothers, mention 2 words from time to time and talk about their experiences. Xiao Ziyuan is about to enroll, and Bai and Junmaru are also going to move up a grade. And the 3 children either without parents or without their parents. School starts tomorrow. Feng Yu thought about it, put the knife away, and went to the room to find out if there were any suitable clothes. Just opened the closet, and there was already a set of Uchiha family celebration clothes inside. The clothes also smelled and were freshly washed and dried. I don't think I'm the only one who thinks so. A good wife and a good mother, Dei. The next day, the wind was fine. Half of Konoha, which has been rebuilt, has ushered in a new school season. For the inhabitants of Konoha, today is their most important day. Can the children in the family enter the ninja school, and can they stand out and become the next civilian genius? This is what the people of Konoha expect. Don't look at Konoha's old being destroyed, just feel that the villagers are pitiful. Why don't they leave? No one will want to leave, even if they worry about their lives from time to time. Why? To use the concept of Fenga's past life, Konoha Village all school district houses. It's also the only school district in the country. A school district that changed its destiny. With this opportunity to take off, who wants to go? Are people from other parts of the Land of Fire so good at enrollment? Is there such a good school? Therefore, today, as long as there are school-age children at home, they all come to sign up. Unless it is particularly crooked, other schools will accept it. After all, the green and yellow do not connect, there is a lack of leaks, and Konoha is also anxious. Lively parents and children turned the whole school into a celebration. In the crowd, from time to time, family children came over, attracting people's attention. But today, it's not them who shine the most. It's a very familiar, but weird couple, and a child that everyone hates. Nine-tailed demon fox, Vortex Naruto. That person, the fourth generation? That's right, listening to the people above, Lord Fangyu summoned him back from the spirit world. That woman is Vortex Joshinai, right? Everyone's perception of the 4 generations of couples is very good, but because of this, it is more and more strange. But how did they get together with the demon fox? Yes, the demon fox is so cruel, why did it send it to school and scare my children? Hey, look, does this demon fox look a bit similar to the 4th generation? Vortex Naruto, Vortex Joshina. No way, passers-by thought of some possibility and widened their eyes. The father of the demon fox is a 4th generation adult? These two people who make people look and feel completely different are actually father and son? But everyone was puzzled, and even looked at the eyes of the 4th generation, and they began to bring doubt and vigilance. But soon, they find another family approaching the past. Lord Frightened? Is Lord Flamboyant also coming to bring people to school? He seems to have a good relationship with the 4th generation and the demon fox, why is that? Do you remember what the 5th generation Hokage said some time ago, that the 9-tailed demon fox was sealed in Naruto's body by the 4th generation? Isn't that a rumor? That child is not a demon fox, but a hero who sealed the demon fox? No kidding, but Lord Fanga is close to them, and I think maybe this is true, The villagers who had lost their loved ones because of the 9 tails were also caught in conflict. Thank you, Feather. Watergate naturally felt the gossip around him. He could not care, but Naruto was obviously depressed, and his wife Kushina was also on the verge of an outburst. But I didn't expect that Fangyu just came close and whitewashed their family. This change. If Watergate can still be imagined, then Joshinai is the most incredible. This child's reputation in Konoha is higher than when her husband was alive. Is this your child? It's all so cute, Joshinai said awkwardly. Xiao Ziyuan raised her chin proudly, but Bai was more like a girl, and lowered her head with a red face. Junmaru nodded, indicating that he heard. Naruto is not bad either. The feather tiger touched Naruto's head. This guy is still in a state of confusion. It is estimated that he has not recovered from the impact of his own life and family reunion. When I got to the registration desk, it was overcrowded. Quite a few people chatted outside the playground. Fingyu also met the rest of the new generation. Itachi brought little Sasuke over to say hello. Koino of the Yamanaka clan. The Fan Maru of the Nara family. The little Dingji of the Akimichi. Inazukaya, Oil Girl Shino, and so on. Hinata's house arrived at the end. After Ning Si respectfully saluted, he was taken to the senior grade by Hongdo. Hinata took Hinata's hand and joined the parent chat group. I don't know if it's an illusion of feather shock. He seems to see little Hinata and cutely fangs at little Aster. Like a little female leopard with fierce milk. When he looked back at him, Hinata was still shy. Perhaps, it's just an illusion. After the new generation enrolls. 2 years passed in the blink of an eye.